Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today I thought I would take the opportunity to say welcome to 2022 and to maybe give you guys an update on the channel and what kind of things we can look forward to seeing this year. It seems like I might be a day late and a dollar short on this particular trend of people kind of giving an update on what they're expecting to do on their channels during the next year, but I thought, what the heck? I'm going to do it anyway, and I'll just give you guys a little brief update while I work on doing some hand stitching on a blouse that I started ages ago, but then got distracted with other projects and never actually seemed to get finished. So, why don't we dive in? For the next year, my thoughts were that I really do want to continue to grow my vintage or vintage inspired wardrobe. I have probably close to 100 to 200 patterns in my stash, many that I got at estate sales or given to me as gifts, or that I've collected over the years at various places. And I would really love to try and make many of those patterns because they've just been sitting in my drawers and in boxes and so forth for years, and I would love to give them a try, give a little bit of pattern review, and build my wardrobe at the same time. So that is definitely something we can look forward to this year, is seeing more vintage patterns, actual vintage patterns, New York patterns, Hollywood patterns, older simplicity patterns, and so forth, starting from about 1920 and working forward through the 60s and 70s. I would also love this year to do a couple of dream projects. I love costuming, and I love having an excuse to make a good costume. I have always wanted a beautiful Regency gown, Jane Austen period, because I love Austen, and I think in the spring this year I would like to have a Jane Austen tea party with some friends and family, provided COVID hasn't gotten entirely out of control again. And so I think I would like to make a Regency style dress. I do think to do it right, I'm going to need to start from the bottom and work my way up. So all the way down to having a correct period style chemise and stays or corset, whatever you'd like to call it. I'm not picky. A lovely petticoat, and then an overdress as well. And I have a couple of patterns that I'd like to try and look at and consider mocking up to work for that. So I think that's something we can definitely look forward to, and look forward to quickly here in the spring, is making a gorgeous Regency gown. And then later on in the year, my kiddos have a couple of projects that they would really like, some costumes they would like. And who knows, we might be doing a little bit of cosplay with them and maybe some family costumes as well. In addition to that, or I guess as a part of that, we are having a larger family get together with some extended family, and my sister-in-law had mentioned something called Disney bounding, which I had never heard of before this, where it's basically creating outfits that have a similarity or resemble a Disney character, but they're not actually recreating their exact outfit. They're more like an impression of their outfit. So you might do Belle from Beauty and the Beast, but make it a gorgeous 1950s swing dress in a beautiful gold, as opposed to doing a traditional Belle dress. And I think that would be a wonderfully fun thing to do. And so I may do a bit of Disney bounding on the channel as well, but hopefully doing so using some of my vintage patterns and bringing those to light by pulling out the old patterns and using some fabrics that are going to make them spectacularly Disney or Marvel Universe, or superheroes, since I've got two little superheroes in my house. It's funny, you don't realize how much you kind of have to concentrate when you're doing things until you're trying to talk about something else at the same time as doing stuff. And it's not difficult, but then I start to get distracted from both hand stitching and from trying to give an update on what we're going to be doing on the channel. This last year, as I started the channel, I started with very low expectations that I would get subscribers, simply because I know that it can be very difficult hundreds of thousands of videos, I think, are uploaded every single day onto YouTube, and making it so that people find your channel can be extremely difficult. But I would love for one of my goals this year to be really increasing the number of subscribers that I have and doing great quality videos that people are interested in coming back to and coming back to continue to watch, which I am hoping the vintage patterns and costuming, that those are both going to be fun things people can really get interested in. I know that I really love doing them, and I love watching other creators on YouTube with that type of content. For this blouse that I'm working on, this is a 1940s, 1950s inspired blouse. I've actually seen quite a few patterns for it that are similar, both traditionally written patterns, Hollywood and New York patterns, but also some patterns that have been written and then published on Etsy that you can purchase, print off, and use as a PDF pattern. I did not actually have a pattern specifically for this one, but I had seen a couple of images online and I really liked the style of it, and so it was my goal to kind of recreate it. And it's similar to the blouse I'm wearing now. It has like these gathers, but many of the blouses have them up here on the shoulders, and I had seen one with the gathers a bit lower. And so I went through my stash and basically pulled out all of the blouse patterns that I had in order to try and find something similar, which I didn't really ever have the correct pieces. So I ended up tracing out one of the old Hollywood patterns that I had for a blouse onto new paper, tracing paper, cutting it all up, modifying the pattern in order to get it. And I am pretty excited about how I think it's going to turn out. It has this lovely gathers that'll go right across the bust, but it's still going to nip in at the waist, and I think it's going to give it a lovely vintage feel. I'm also using a fabric that I happen to have yards and yards and yards of, which was part of a haul that my mother and I found years ago. We were going to be using it for flower girl dresses for my sister's wedding, and then inevitably everything went crazy and sideways, and my beautiful sister ended up eloping in Europe with her husband, and so I just ended up with this box with yards and yards and yards of this fabulous white fabric. And so it's been kind of a thought in my mind, how many things can I make with this fabric, and will I keep it white for all of them? I am considering using this as one of the petticoats for the Regency style dress, as white underdresses were extremely popular during the Regency period. And so doing this for the petticoat or for the underdress would be very, very appropriate and would give it a very period appropriate feel. And so I may be doing that, but I also have some spectacular gold fabric that I'd like to use as well, some gold silk that has been in my stash for ages. What I'm doing right now is I am actually just tacking down the lining for the collar of this blouse, and I am making sure to just go through this little folded over portion of the collar and not go all the way through, because I don't really want to see these stitches on the outside of the finished blouse. So I'm picking up tiny, tiny stitches on the outer portion and making sure not to go all the way through the fabric, which is exactly how things would have been done in the 40s and 50s when making a blouse, and you would have been tacking it down. They would have used a hand stitch and invisible stitch to get these lining pieces down nice and flat. Now in our modern world, when you toss this into the washing machine and into the dryer, it's going to come out terribly wrinkly, and this lining piece is going to be kind of crazy and crumpled, and so you really have to iron it to get a lovely look, which, you know, historically obviously things would have been ironed as well. However, because many things would have been hand washed and then shaken out and put onto the line, you wouldn't have really dealt with that as much, and so historically speaking, this would have been an extremely useful way of finishing off a garment because you wouldn't have been concerned about it being all wrinkled up. So something to consider if you are going to be making a historical blouse. Just know that if you use modern washing techniques, you probably are going to have to really open up that blouse when you pull it out of the dryer and give it a nice solid ironing before wearing it, or it'll be kind of crumpled and wrinkly underneath, which is not an attractive look. Once I have finished tacking down the lining for the collar piece, the only things I have left to do on this particular blouse are create buttonholes and then hem the bottom of the blouse, and then it's definitely wearable. Alright guys, here is our finished blouse, 1940s inspired blouse. I think it came out pretty darn good. I like that the back is fairly well fitted. It tucks into my 1940s simplicity pants pretty darn well. I like these gathers across the top of the bust. I like that it flares out without adding bulk to the shoulders, so I'm pretty darn happy about that. And it's just nice to have a classic white blouse to add to my collection of blouses, which actually goes really nicely with everything. I had a great time today having a cup of tea, finishing up this blouse, and speaking to you all about what our goals are for 2022. Thank you so much for joining me here today, guys, and I look forward to all of our fabulous projects for the year. Bye.